Did I live in some kind of alternate universe 2009? I could have sworn blind I'd never watch a movie with Robert Pattinson in it. Vin Diesel had a video game where he just played Vin Diesel. I was still trying to convince myself that heroes could be great again, and you could watch an entire movie on YouTube without ads, as long as you didn't mind it being in 10 parts and stuck at 360p. Yet all of that is still more believable than Tyrese Gibson writing for Image Comics. Yeah, that Tyrese Gibson. You may remember him as the loud character from Transformers, or the loud character from the Fast and the Furious series, or the loud character from his Twitter beef with The Rock. Although he has his charms, it's hard to say that he's the first name that you think of when it comes to celebrities who should write comics. But in 2009, the Big T got the chance to bring his unique brand of style, passion, and humour to the comics industry, and for a few months it gave us a hype train that seemed too big to fail. Robert Kirkman was hyping it up.
You need to get Mayhem. Tyrese Gibson's a good guy.
Comic-Con was filled with chants of mayhem, and all the interviews seemed to suggest that Gibson was all in to become the next big creator for Image Comics. But it's been 15 years, and Image doesn't even have a reference to it on the website. Tyrese hasn't even thought of uttering the word mayhem, and I seem to be the only person who even remembers that this train wreck existed. So what went wrong? Woof woof! Hey guys, it's me Marcus, aka the Mad Dog, and I'm gonna do a deep dive into one of the most bizarre moments in Image Comics history. Legit, I'm mostly making this so I've got something to go back to in case I ever wake up again at 3 in the morning when I should be asleep just because I'm questioning whether this existed. So let's jump into the story of Mayhem. We're in 2009 Los Angeles. The city is a brew of colours, sounds, and cat urine. And nope, this isn't me taking any kind of creative liberty, this is the opening monologue of the series. Have I ever done this to myself? We're in Chinatown, and our titular character is eavesdropping from a rooftop. In a swift swoop, he breaks in. Knives prime because they're silent, and his enemy will never see them coming. Because as we all know, guns are useless because you hear the bang, and it's just super easy to dodge them. And it's also despite the fact that he throws them directly in everyone's line of sight, and loudly broke through a window that was right next to them, and then immediately started shooting anyway once he'd thrown his knives. What a wise tactical genius. Meanwhile, Felicia, who's his accomplice, is such a clear rip-off of Black Widow that I heard Scarlett Johansson's voice when I read this, is scoping the inside for great insights like the size of the window in an office that's visible from the street anyway, despite her never doing any recon and just sitting at a table drinking what I can only assume is the cat urine that created the smell in the first place. But the duo get the information that they need, another connection to the elusive Mr. X, the Kingpin of LA. That for legal reasons, I must stress we can't actually call the Kingpin. Honestly, this synopsis is hurting me and I'm barely 5 pages in, because it's pretty much every bad 90s cliche that you could imagine, but just rolled into one character. Mayhem has pouches, dual wields his pistols, a massive scar, ear piercings, has a face that looks like it physically can't smile. In fact, there's only one way to describe him. He's extreme! So you know what, why not make this fun and do a 90s action movie cliche bingo? I made one for you here, so feel free to follow along at home, but we've already got 3 ticked off. The other categories that we've got villain in a yacht, villain on a skyscraper, racist stereotypes, tragic childhood flashback, a double cross, religion, on the nose moral commentary, ridiculously over the top violence for no reason, awful one-liners, side plot that goes nowhere, sequel setup with no payoff. Wait, am I describing Mayhem or a Zack Snyder movie? And a third act big villain reveal. You know, the type where the person who you thought was to blame actually turns out to be a puppet for someone else. All of these stories have one of those. Anyway, Dante, which is Mayhem's real name, goes to prey in honestly what is one of the most confusing panels I've ever seen in my life. I'm not too sure why it looks like he's about to kill 2 kids, which I can't pretend I'm too against, when it's clear that he's just reminiscing, but the kids aren't faded or in black and white or anything. I'm not sure if God is actually talking to him, or if God had spoken to him when he was much younger. I don't know, maybe God was also visiting the church, because the rules of space and time just don't seem to apply here. So yeah, Dante is praying in what is pretty much his vigilante uniform, so I don't get why he'd bother hiding his identity. And he prays that when he finally meets Mr. X, it can be long and painful, because that's the kind of thing he thinks God would want. There's a brief conversation with a priest about morality, and I think I've got a chance of winning this bingo before the end of the first issue. We then see a deal take place on a yacht, and Mayhem wastes no time blowing the whole thing up, and reclaims a briefcase which seems loaded with money. Now, I'm that pedantic with this series that when it tries to sound intelligent, it really makes me want to fact check it. But the first thing that I could check is the rate at which C4 detonates, and I just really don't want to end up on some kind of list for googling that. And I get that I'm being quite harsh on this book despite the fact that I haven't really achieved much in my own life. So one point of praise, I liked how the sun moved with the passage of time. It doesn't save the book because, well, nothing can. But it's nice. We're then in downtown LA at the lair of Mr. X. And do you want to take a guess where that is? Yep, the top of a skyscraper. And our introduction to him is him shooting a man through the head with what I can only assume is a coconut-sized bullet. Pretty bold of Mr. X to not rely on knives because, as we all know, no one can see them coming. Mr. X is everything you'd expect from the bad guy in a story like this, but the addition of a good head of hair is a nice twist on the Kingpin. I meant Mr. X. He's stern, abhors failure, and doesn't have a lot of patience. Hey wait, I think I just described myself. We see him react to the news of Mayhem blowing up the boat, and it's clear that Tyrese has been a thorn in his side for a while now. He's stressed, but it's cool because he can unwind and spend some time with his daughter. And oh my god, are you kidding me? It's Felicia. The second issue opens with another traumatic childhood flashback, but this is important because it's Tyrese. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep calling him that because I've already forgotten his real name and it's clear that that's who he's based off. And it's the first time that he ever shot a gun, but he did it to protect his mother, and also after being slashed by a pair of scissors. I guess it must have been so silent that he never saw it coming. This then somehow seamlessly blends into another traumatic nightmare where his mum is marrying Mr. X? If this is actually what happened and there's no kind of embellishment or kooky shit, which, you know, can often happen in a dream, then thank God that Mayhem dreams both of the key parts of his origin story in a row, else he might have tried to have made a fourth issue. But now it's the present day. There's another drug deal, everyone's saying bitch for some reason, and then a car just comes barreling through. Bodies, bullets, and even a van fly in the air. Mayhem now has a Mayhem mobile. And I kinda like it. But how did he manage to afford this? Did he buy it already with the money that he stole from the yacht? Because that's quite a quick turn around. I can't lie though, this action scene is quite fun. I thought we might have been able to take off bad one-liners when Mayhem says keep your chin up before throwing a box of matches into someone's mouth, but I honestly don't even know what the joke is there. We return to Mr. X's building that has been copied and pasted from the previous issue, with the same cars on the street and everything. Nice. He's had even more of enough than he had the last time we saw him and basically repeats the exact same meeting. Maybe that's why the art was copied across. But he's enlisted the help of a terrifying group of hitmen, and in a medium with fun group names such as the Sinister Six, the Legion of Doom, the Masters of Evil, the Big T gives us the Four Corners? Ironic because the only four corners I'm scared of contain the story of Mayhem. Do you get because a book has four corners? No? Well, at least it's not the worst thing written in this video. The Four Corners have one task: bring the body of Mayhem, which is probably because in the last issue, Mr. X just demanded his head. But these hitmen must be able to teleport or something though, because he immediately appear at the car chase that started before the meeting where they were introduced. Damn, maybe this book is smarter than I realised. Regiment is the first to attack. He's an international assassin with heavy weaponry and looks like he's been created from the Skull and Nick Nitro. Mad respect to anyone who gets that reference. He doesn't look like a normal thug or even a normal person, sporting both a mohawk and a mullet, like the two greatest hairstyles of the 90s had a child together. And Tyrese comments that he doesn't shoot like a normal thug either. Except he kinda does because he's incapable of hitting the main character. Daisho quickly joins the attack, a suited up assassin with katanas who's too quick for Tyrese's bullets. If only somebody would tell him that knives are better because they're silent. Inmate joins the fight within seconds, which is about the same amount of time it took to come up with his name. I actually quite like his attack and his design of having knives at the end of his straitjacket, and the dude loves pain, which Tyrese promises he will get more of. I'm just gonna count that as an awful one-liner, even though there's zero punchline. But there's one corner missing, so Tenbone wait, come on, is that seriously the name that they're going for? Introduces himself with some weird magic, and it was at this point that I realised I don't have a clue what kind of world this book is in anymore. There's no explanation why he's magic, or if it's just a trick, or if other people in this world are magic and Mr. X should have just hired 4 magicians, or if Tyrese could have learned magic, or maybe I could be magic. And now I'm just wondering, why wasn't the story following this guy? But the Four Corners are too much for Mayhem. They shoot him, slice him, knee him in the balls, stand in his line of sight and do nothing, punch him despite knowing magic, and do a number of things that I'd prefer to have happen to me than ever have to read this series again. They even throw a grenade at him as a way to say goodbye, leaving Mayhem to die in the biggest explosion I've ever seen from a hand grenade. But Mr. X isn't happy, so literally nothing's changed. After all, this was his city they were destroying, and yeah, he wanted to kill Mayhem at any cost, but not at that cost. Regiment confirms the kill in the most horrific British-Australian dialect, and Tenbone refutes this in an accent that I'd get cancelled for if I attempted, so I'm just not gonna do it. And he can confirm this because he's spoken to the spirit world. Seriously, why isn't he the main character? The spirit world tells him that Mayhem is still alive, then drops 10 bones onto the table? That's why his name is 10 Bones? Is that how he communicates with the spirits, or does he produce them after doing magic? Or does he specifically have to collect 10 to use his powers? Wait, what is this? Mayhem survives and also manages to make it back to the church, honestly looking the best I've ever seen someone look after having a grenade thrown at them. And I want to take this moment to tell you that Mayhem has no superpowers. The bullet to the shoulder is apparently life-threatening, so Felicia, whose sidekick name is Malice, good job on not telling us that one earlier, gets to work so that the wound can be treated, and when he wakes, he overhears Felicia mentioning that Mr. X killed their mother, a secret which she's apparently kept for years, and only reveals on the very first instance where Mr. X utters the word family. Yes, it's really poorly alluded to, but Felicia and Tyrese are actually related, and Mr. X is technically his stepdad. I can't tell if this was supposed to be a dramatic reveal because I went back to check, and in issue 1, God says something about respecting his father, but honestly, this whole thing is too dumb to give it much thought. But we even had a scene earlier where we saw Felicia go up to Mr. X's office and he dropped everything for it. So why can't Mayhem just be Tyrese for a moment, or whatever his real name is, and just schedule a meeting with his stepdad so he can get his revenge that way? That seems much easier. Anyway, Tyrese decides yet again that it's finally time to go after Mr. X, which also concludes this issue. I need a break before I read any more Mayhem, and I'm sorry for subjecting you to such an appalling comic. So I'm gonna do you a solid in case you wanted to pick up any decent books, because we've got discount codes with the channel sponsors. If you're in the EU, we've got Comics Bugle, and for everyone else, we've got organic price books. They've got great packaging, fast shipping, and amazing customer services, and if you use code WOOFWOOF, you'll get $2 off your order. And if you're ordering 3 or more books and you want them to be delivered together, make sure you use code WOOFWOOF, ship it together for 5% off your entire order. Don't worry, you can just copy and paste them from the description down below, and you can use these codes as many times as you like. And Comics Bugle have been a massive support to this channel, so if you're in the EU and you want free shipping and free gifts with every order, then they're the only place that you need to go. And if you use code WOOFWOOF, you'll get 3% off all items that aren't already in a sale. So make sure you get your orders in, and you might be able to forget Mayhem. Okay, look, I know how painful it is getting through this book because I've done it twice now for this video, but we've only got one issue left, and it's quite sweet because it's dedicated to Jim Lee. And if you wanted something that's dedicated to Jim Lee but is better than whatever the fuck Mayhem is, then check out this video. We open at Watts Tower, a place that actually exists, has never been mentioned in the book before, and information that is immediately irrelevant because Tyrese is on his Mayhem cycle, driving in downtown, which is at best 11 miles away. Was this panel supposed to be like a loading screen for the issue or something? The buildings are a blur for Tyrese, which says to me he isn't in any fit state to be driving, but he avoids a collision and the police because Mr. X has already paid them off, which sounds like a nice thing to do. He arrives at the skyscraper to see an army, but it's okay because Tyrese has a bullet for each of them, strong enough to penetrate their armor. So no idea why he wears pretty much the exact same thing but with even less Kevlar, and doesn't even cover up the shoulder that he's already been shot in. Then again, bullets are so loud that he can easily dodge them. Yeah, I know that joke's getting old now, but it's the last issue, and the sure as shit isn't going to be a sequel that I can use it in again. The tactical genius that he is crashes his bike to launch himself forward in a technique that was already classified as dumb when Mission Impossible 2 did it 9 years earlier. He dispatches of everyone so easily that he just thinks he's one-liners instead of speaking them, but shots narrowly miss him from behind. Mr. X wasn't so dumb to have his armor just stand all in a line in front of the building. He did cover all angles. Oh wait, nope, it's just the preacher decided getting on the action. I've got no words for that. The elevator dings and Daisho attacks on her own, having forgotten that ganging up on Tyrese was the key to victory last time. They fight in a ridiculously narrow corridor, so it's surprising that Felicia can swoop in and grab a spinning kick in mid-air. Dangerous move. Last time I saw somebody grab a kick like that.
The strikes at the moment.
Felicia says that she'll take care of the 80s reject, which will forever be the clearest example of the pot calling the kettle black. Oh, and if you weren't convinced that there was a bad one-liner before, then you can definitely take it off here. We then take a break to see that the Reverend's being interrogated. For some reason. I never thought the book would be so determined to finish this plot thread, especially since it completely forgot about the police investigation in issue 1. But Daisho has got the upper hand on Felicia, but still allows her enough time to call Tyrese, where he fortunately tells her that they're okay to kill. She must have missed the mountain of bodies that were left outside the front door, and forgotten about all the murders that this duo had been a part of since issue 1. Regiment greets Tyrese with a wall of gunfire that he somehow avoids again, and the smell of his cigar gives away the British Aussie's position. I'd have used the fact that he was talking seconds before this as an indication, but sure, whatever. Detective vision your way through this. Regiment surrenders like ridiculously quickly, and despite knowing that Tyrese kills people. But what do we have here? Tyrese shows some kind of mercy and only shoots his fingers off. And I can't help but wonder, did Tyrese maybe leave him alive for a possible return. Next floor and a sofa's thrown at him, but that's okay because Tyrese hates cliches, and I've got a nearly complete bingo card that would beg to differ. Tyrese uses 10 bones voodoo against him in a cliche yet created for this series way, and again, if this magic voodoo exists in this world, why wouldn't you just learn to master that? Anyway, up another floor and Tyrese tells himself that he's close. Hopefully he's close to the end of this fucking series because I've had enough. Inmate leaps out to the surprise of Tyrese and maybe he forgot how many corners had attacked him, and it's revealed that Inmate has 4 arms. For some reason. How many pages of this shit are left? He seems to throw a knife through Tyrese's skull, which, as we all know, is just a minor injury that has barely any effect. To give it credit, this fight is somewhat entertaining. Tyrese does eventually get the upper hand, despite the fact that he gets stabbed, still decides to just use his guns and limited ammo, and even has his mask broken. It's cool though, why not just replace it with any other Red Hood cosplay? But it's time for the showdown that we've all been waiting for, mostly because it means the series will end. Tyrese limps into Mr. X's office and is immediately baseball batted to the head because he didn't see it coming. That's not something I've added, and I'm resisting every urge to take from that low-hanging fruit. Mr. X rips a mask off to see that Dante is underneath, and he asks him why he's done all this. Something I found myself asking repeatedly during this video. Mayhem says, "My mother, my father, both dead? Planned by you? Why?" Anyone else read that like Stevie from Malcolm in the Middle? No, just me. And then in his next panel mentions that he killed his dad anyway. And forgive me for maybe missing the nuances of Mayhem, but didn't he kill his dad to save his mom? How could Mr. X plan for that to happen? He's oddly fucking like Yagami, or, you know, some kind of non-manga reference. Anyway, Mr. X explains his motivations. They was working on the force to control the streets, but crime always found a way to win. So instead he went to control crime, and honestly, this makes him the most developed character in this whole series. Tyrese then somehow manages to overcome his ailment and punches through Mr. X? Seriously, look at this panel, what else can I take this to be? That and another smashing punch is all it takes to dethrone Mr. X, but he can still talk despite clearly being attacked in the throat region seconds earlier. Felicia comes in and reveals a double cross, and who even cares at this point? The narration then switches to Mr. X for some reason, as we see him going for a broken bat whilst Tyrese is distracted, and thank God they gave us his viewpoint for this moment. Because if they got rid of that and I just saw the villain of the series grabbing a sharp object whilst the hero's back is turned, I'd never be able to figure out what his intention is. But in true cliche action fashion, the hero turns around at the last second, finally bringing an end to this very shallow mission, falling in front of Girl Detective and Boy Detective, who are reappearing for the first time since they were introduced during that one scene in issue 1. Another one ticked off, and thank God we got some closure with these guys, otherwise this would have felt like a colossal waste of time. They scan the scene and determine that the perps must have gotten away. Somehow. The only clue that we get, 50 floors, makes for a more dramatic exit than the elevator, which does absolutely nothing to explain how they could survive that drop. Like, did they parachute? Does Mayhem now have a Mayhem copter to go along with his Mayhem bike and Mayhem mobile, and it was being driven by the priest and he just picked them up? Or did Mayhem listen to my suggestion and learn magic? I don't care anymore, there's only a few pages left to go, and at least Mr. X is dead. Oh crap, he's still alive. Despite being shot in the head at point blank range by 2 trained assassins. And I guess... Bingo. If you're wondering what your prize is, you never have to read Mayhem at... What? Oh wait, we didn't take off 3rd act big villain reveal. That's a shame. Normally you're guaranteed something like that in this type of story.
Foreshadowing is a narrative device.
The only consolation prize that I have for you is it's been 15 years since these 3 issues released, and unless it's planning on doing an Avatar, the sequel is nowhere in sight. But that was Mayhem, and you're probably wondering right now either A, do I ever stop talking, or B, was that the worst comic that I've ever read? And honestly, I can only answer no to the first one. Already it's pretty evident why this series didn't take the comic book world by storm, and if you can't figure out why, go back and watch the synopsis again. But part of the problem was due to the hype it got before the first issue was even released. So I wanted to dive into the forgotten 4 corners of the internet and figure out how something so big could just disappear into nothing. For me, it started with San Diego Comic-Con 2009, a venue that was dominated by the word mayhem, at least from what I could see over the internet whilst I was in high school. Damn, that's how long ago this was. But for as much stick as I've given him, Tyrese is a man of the people with a big following. This was even before he returned for the second wind of the Fast and Furious Furious franchise. Which for further context, by the time that the Mayhem hype train had left the station, we'd only had 4 Fast and Furious movies, none of which had even passed $500 million worldwide, and Tyrese had only been in the one that was somehow worse than the 4th one. But the fact that Tyrese was already a star still just makes me ask more questions than it answers. How much success did they think this guaranteed? Was the comic the focus or the name behind it? And can a big name save a bad title, which, let's not forget, Mayhem definitely is. But it's clear that Tyrese is at least ambitious because he wanted major comic shops to pre-order at least 50,000 copies each.
My goal would be 50,000 from one store.
And in the comment sections at the time, there was rumblings of the first issue selling more than 1 million copies. For comparison, The Walking Dead issue 100 from 2012 sold 379,000 copies. That was an anniversary issue for Image's biggest title that had countless variant covers, residual popularity from the TV show, and the promise that Negan was here. So hearing the rumours that Gibson was aiming for 1 million copies of Mayhem may make The Walking Dead sound small by comparison. But it wasn't. Issue 100 was the best-selling single issue for Image Comics in the entirety of the 2010s. And I'm not just using The Walking Dead to beat Mayhem up with, because in recent years Kingspawn issue 1 was the best-selling first issue for Image Comics of the entire 21st century so far. And just have a guess how many copies it sold. Go on, feel free to say it out loud because I'm kinda just talking to a screen at this point. 497,000. And that's for Image's flagship property nearly 30 years after it debuted. Although, credit where it's due, Tyrese was definitely trying his best. Pretty much daily before the August release, he was encouraging, or more demanding, his loyal Twitter following to call the local comic shop and order 400 copies each. Which, just for the record, if that fan then had to buy all 400 of those copies, it would cost them just shy of $1,200. Although that didn't stop the fans. Just looking at the comments on an article that even dared to question if this approach could lead to success, the tyrants were out in full force with comments such as, "This first one's in all capital letters, so if I'm not loud enough already, just pretend I'm shouting at you." Yeah, now, that's making a change. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. I think this person now owes Leonard Cohen royalties. XOXOX, and then a bunch of exclamation marks. He shoots and he scores again. Comma, comma, comma. Balling! Lol, so proud of you. As usual, stay focused on glory. Maybe they meant that Denzel Washington film from the 90s. As I know you already know. Very direct and personal. All I can say, your victories are motivational to others. Keep the threes coming. Go Lakers! This person must have been so impressed with how well Tyrese attends Lakers games that they completely forgot what the article was even about. And to be fair, with all the grammar and punctuation issues, I kind of forgot as well. Tyrese has opened up a whole new world to me that I never imagined venturing into. I'm not just excited for him, but for myself as well. After all, it's never too late to try new things. It's reading a comic, it's hardly going skydiving. Go Mayhem! Take me away. Love it. Stay up, Ty. Changing the game. Believe that. And for those of you who don't know his work or couldn't care less about him, don't worry, you will because he's relevant and here to stay. This is only his beginning in the comic book world, that is. Well, let's check. Another one because I'm quite enjoying this. This looks like the kind of work that would naturally be a sub 5k kind of book in the national DM marketplace. Wait, this one isn't blind praise. I ordered 3 copies of Mayhem issue 1. Without the sense that Gibson was behind it, based on the cover and the solicitation blurb alone, my natural order would have been 0 copies. How can he say 0 without putting a 1 and 5 other zeros before it? I'd be ecstatic if I had to reorder the book if I guessed too low, but at this moment I'm not actually expecting to sell the copies I've bought, non-returnable as it is. Pfft, this guy must just be one of them haters. Only ordering 3 copies of Mayhem? That's possibly the worst financial move you could have made in 2009. You know what? I'm not having this Tyrese slander. Let's have a look who this Brian Hibbs guy is. Okay, staff writer for Comic Book Resources, owner of Comics Experience in San Francisco since 1989 when he was only 21, writer of Tilting at Windmills. Okay, maybe I backed the wrong horse in this argument. But what does a guy who's worked in the industry since the 80s and owns a comic shop know about comic sales in comparison to a legion of fans that don't even know how to spell. Credit where it's due, it did break an order record over at Meltdown Comics in LA, but only 10,000 copies were ordered, and that's the biggest win that I can find whilst researching this. It's impressive because some monthly series can't even break 5 figures, but Mayhem managed to do it with just one shop. But there's a massive difference between ordering 10,000 copies and selling 10,000 copies. And the fact that there's no report of them ordering the same quantity or more for issues 2 and 3 makes me think that if there's a leak in their roof, it's probably padded with excess mayhem. To add further fuel to the fire, we have to go back to Brian Hibbs, who, following his earlier comment, Tyrese reached out to him personally and even tweeted to his loyal following to call the comics experience and order mayhem, reassuring Hibbs that his sole intention was to use mayhem as a vehicle to bring new people into comics, which is a commendable goal, except that Gibson's own actions actively prevented that from happening, by encouraging his fans from across the planet to call one shop within San Francisco, and not just that, but if the phone is busy, keep ringing. Gibson actively hindered customers that were legitimately trying to contact the comics experience about a ticketed Neil Gaiman event that was going to happen just a few days later. If only there was some way that we could determine who was right in this argument, like some kind of concrete numbers to back everything up. Wait, thanks to Comic Run, that's possible, because they keep an archive of the best-selling single issues month by month, and 2009 isn't without its claim to fame, as the best-selling single issue of the entire decade was from this year. And if you genuinely think I'm building this up to say it's mayhem, then please, let me have a bump of whatever you're on. It was the Amazing Spider-Man issue 583, and if you've already watched my Marvel Iceberg video, then you'll know why this sold so well, shipping out an estimated 530,000 units, which is still about half of what Tyrese thought Mayhem could sell. Still, with a cover price of $3.99, the total sales exceeded $2 million. And let's be real, this video is probably going to get about £5, so that's pretty decent in my eyes. So maybe I'm being a bit too harsh on Mayhem. Does it really matter if it didn't make the top spot? As long as it's somewhere in that ballpark, then it's still probably going to be a success. Give me a sec, I'm going to find it.
One eternity later.
Okay, I didn't find Mayhem in the top 500 best-selling for 2009, but who knows, maybe this just doesn't keep track of image books, that's a possibility. And, you know, the fact that there's already 2 other image books on there might purely be a coincidence. Image United issue 1 is on here with an estimated 44,700 units shipped, and this was a collaboration between nearly all of the original Image Comics founders and Robert Kirkman. And the highest Image Comics seller for 2009 is Haunt issue 1 with 51,800 units shipped, a book that was a collaboration between Kirkman and Todd McFarlane. But don't worry, I'm just sure it's Tyrese being his humble self, and he didn't want his debut success overshadowing any of the top 500 books for that year. So no idea why the sales for August show that Mayhem issue 1 only sold an estimated 5,900 units. For context, that put it in 233rd place for the month of August, and wasn't even a quarter of what issue 64 of The Walking Dead shipped in the same month. Oh, and don't even ask about the sales on issues 2 and 3 because they didn't even make the list. So perhaps I'm just a poor researcher, that's very likely, but it doesn't look like Mayhem was the big seller they planned to be. The only other evidence that I have is again from Brian Hibbs, who said he ordered 191 copies of issue 1, but later explains that 150 of them went to the same person. And I'm gonna guess they were bought by G. Tibson. And the fact that there was never a collected edition even solicited for this speaks volumes. I wish there was, because it might have made this video easier to make. But Image Comics is a company where the creators choose how they want the titles reprinted. If this was selling, Tyrese and everybody else involved would have made sure that there was another way to get this book. Unless, and this is just me thinking out loud, but maybe Tyrese, I'm gonna sound crazy for saying this, but maybe Tyrese knew nothing about the comics industry before writing Mayhem. The thing is, and I want to state this now, I think comics should be accessible to everyone, whether that be a reader or a creator. Gibson wanting to write a comic isn't a bad thing, but he needed to have the right motivation and have a genuine care for the industry. That's where the problem lies with Mayhem. I had to dig deeper. There needed to be a reason why this book disappeared to a point beyond obscurity, to that point where no one even remembers it, let alone talks about it. Tyrese included. So I started at its inception, and despite the limited articles I could find on the book, Gibson did an interview with CNN where he said, "I went out to Comic-Con about a year or so ago to promote the film Death Race. By the way, I quite like that movie. When I was out there, I really got to know some of the fans, and I was just asking questions like, look at you, you've got a full-on Superman costume on, or Batman costume." There was no question there. And they were just like, "I just love comic books." It was the first time I was ever exposed to that much selfless passion, to the point where you don't care how silly you may look. You don't even consider it silly. And there's already a few red flags right here. Now, to give it some leeway, I don't see the quick timing of it all as a problem, as Death Race was released in 2008 and Mayhem was published in 2009, and I'm sure there's many creators that when inspiration strikes, they can craft a decent concept and script within a year. What does strike me as odd is the way that Gibson views the comic book community. It's that word that he uses. Silly. A word that harkens back to the Adam West era of Batman, and diminishes any kind of love or passion for comics to just be something that's childlike. Yet there was a view of comics that hadn't been relevant since the early 70s. They'd transformed, something that Gibson should be more than used to, and evolved to be able to craft deeper, more nuanced stories, which was exactly what the fans of this medium wanted, and wouldn't be able to get with Mayhem. Sure, they may cosplay as Batman or Superman and not care what the world thinks, but that's at the core of why we have gravitated towards this medium. It's the idea that we can be better and strive towards those ideals, and having felt like an outcast for all of our lives, but then finding our place within the universe. No one who spends hundreds, maybe even thousands on a cosplay cares in the slightest if anyone thinks that they look silly. This may be me jumping the gun a bit, but the fact that he uses that word says to me that that's what he saw the comic book community to be just a year before he tried to write for it. He didn't understand why we like Superman, Batman, Spawn, Spider-Man, or any of the countless comic characters that have stood the test of time. Instead, he just saw the passion those people at Comic-Con had, and I have a sneaking suspicion that he thought that passion could be translated into cash. And I get the feeling that that's all that Gibson saw through this endeavour, mostly because of how bad the final product was. Because I can't honestly believe that he had this burning passion to write this book after just seeing a few people do cosplay. What I do think he saw was what was happening during this era. Sure, Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, Robert Kirkman, and other creators who'd worked for Image were already multi-millionaires, but the real money was turning your comic into something other than a comic. Movies, TV shows, video games, merchandise, action figures. And if this was coming out today, probably some dumb form of NFT. The potential was there to make a comic IP a household name. Scott Pilgrim, which started out as a little independent book, had a big budget movie on the horizon. The Dark Knight and Iron Man were two of the biggest movies in 2008. And even Mark Millar's Wanted was getting an adaptation that pretty much ditched off the entire concept and made it about assassins who get the name of the targets through a loom that makes jumpers. Maybe that movie isn't as good as 15-year-old me thought it was. Any rabid Tyrese defenders may want to cry in the comments that this is all just theory and say that Tyrese is a massive comic fan. What about all the years when he was campaigning to try and be Luke Cage? What actor would take a comic role without knowing anything about the comics? Besides, like, most of them. Where's the evidence that he's not a fan of this hobby and just doing it for money? And that's a fair point, which is why I'm glad that pretty much every article and interview that I found from around this time shows him promoting everything other than the comic, more than the comic itself. Answer me this, what is every debut comic lacking? And if for whatever reason you said dance song remix, then Mayhem has you covered. One of his other careers is as a musician, so this is quite a smart move to hopefully make the two overlap, except that this song has absolutely nothing to do with Mayhem. The lyrics don't even say the word Mayhem. In an even more desperate attempt, the 3 issues of Mayhem are subtitled Take Me Away. For some reason. The entire book is set in LA, and Mayhem nor any of the major characters seem to want to leave. So who is the me in this book who wants to be taken away from this? Besides myself. And I've already forgotten the story of the comic, but I'm pretty certain that this song is just talking about someone crying and flying, which unless it's talking about how they got out of that building at the end, I have no idea how this connects to Mayhem. It makes me wish that the auto-tune in this song was as silent as Mayhem's knives. To give it credit, the remix was bundled with the first issue, and maybe this is why the sales figures were so low, because Diamond probably didn't count these towards the total. So now it probably did break into the 1 million units figure. But having the series go digital at the same time as the physical release is quite innovative, given that this was 2 full years before either Marvel or DC went same day digital for new releases. On top of that, it was the first interactive comic that was available on iTunes, and tried to evolve the comic experience by including sound effects, animated page turns, and also voiceovers.
The egg rolls are overcooked. The egg rolls are overcooked. Look at my water.
And take a guess who voiced Mayhem. I'll give you a clue. It was the guy that in an interview said that he wasn't focusing on making this a starring role for himself.
It's not about a starring vehicle for Tyrese. I'm not even convinced that I'm gonna star in my own comic book. This is just about it being a comic book.
And no one even asked him the question. And considering his earlier comments about people dressing as a favourite superhero looking silly, who wouldn't want their own Mayhem costume? Yes, thanks to his partnership with Party City, if you or your kid? A kid's costume? Seriously? Well, if either of you wanted to dress up like your favourite mercenary, you can hope that they have a costume in stock. Otherwise, you can pick up Mayhem. Because who's better for your young kid than a murderous vigilante that carries 2 knives in his belt and whose sole purpose is to murder his childhood father figure? Is this meant to be a GTA satire joke that got cut? And I tried to find a costume of this online, mostly so that I could do a scene, but they have disappeared. The costume doesn't even look like the character. At no point in the book does Mayhem have the word Mayhem written across his chest. And I can't help but think that they all must be stashed somewhere in Tyrese's $4 million mansion. And I have no joke for that, it looks like a beautiful house, so good on him. It's a shame too having to go in on a project like this because everyone involved seemed to have so much love and passion for Mayhem, and really believed it could be the thing that comics needed to bring in new readers. Just look at any article or interview that was done about the book, especially this one that I found that was done by Percy Carey in the April before Mayhem's release. I just realised now I might be pronouncing it wrong and it's Carey rather than Carey, and I can't lie, even though I've read the final product, Percy Carey's hope for this series is infectious. I wonder if he said anything else about the book.
2 seconds later.
And I don't know what's more alarming, the fact that Mayhem felt the need to have a marketing director. It's a 3-issue book, I'm sure you don't need that many people working on it. Or was it the fact that Percy Carey was a columnist for the article that was announcing Mayhem, so either wasn't the head of marketing at that time, meaning that he jumped onto the book just 3 months before he resigned from it, or he didn't declare it whilst writing this article. Or the fact that an Eisner-nominated writer wanted to get involved with Mayhem after hearing anything about it, or everything that Carey said during his resignation letter. And I've got the article here, but the parts that jumped out to me with the fact that Team Mayhem sending insults to Brian Hibbs and other people within the industry was his reason for stepping down. Carey also touches on how the industry is often wary of media types that are trying to break into comics without showing it any respect. And although he doesn't state it explicitly, he does suggest that that was part of the problem with Mayhem. On 2 separate occasions, he refers to Team Mayhem as doing snake oil selling marketing techniques, and I just want to take this moment to clarify that I'm not saying that Mayhem is a scam, but some of the definitions of snake oil say that it has to be that. There definitely was a version of Mayhem that was available to buy, so it wasn't a scam, it was just a really lazy and poor quality product that they were trying to sell. But honestly, Mayhem probably would have done better if it was just snake oil. He does confirm that the 10,000 units being sold to one comic shop was legit, and the rest of his letter is sincere, so I have no reason to doubt this. I guess that brings the total number of units for issue 1 to over 15,000, which is great, but there's still no information on issues 2 and 3. What's also interesting is the date of his resignation, August 14th, 2009, only 2 weeks after Mayhem issue 1 was launched, and I don't know how quickly Diamond or Image get numbers in and dish those out to creators, but because of the close timing, I feel that this move from Carey was genuinely because of his feelings towards the team, rather than trying to abandon a sinking ship. Although, if it is the latter, that really doesn't help the narrative that I'm trying to build here, so I'm just gonna do the YouTuber thing of ignoring it. The way the promotion was handled annoyed Carey so much that he even stepped down as Senior Vice President of Arch Enemy Entertainment. And right now you may be thinking the exact same thing as me. What the hell is Arch Enemy Entertainment? Don't waste your time googling it because there's a band with the same name that seem a lot more popular and I don't think they're connected to Mayhem. Although at this point, I wouldn't be surprised. Arch Enemy Entertainment's original website appears to be delisted, the link to their comic book database page is a dead end, and all I could really find is a fandom wiki entry. So take absolutely everything that you're about to see and hear with a pinch of salt, and just add in the word allegedly everywhere. But the info that I got from here is it was aiming to be a multimedia conglomerate that started out by publishing novels and comics, the first of which was released in 2006. UTF, Undead Task Force. I've never heard of it, but this wiki claims they marked on the top 300 comic books of all time. No, it did not. I can't even be bothered to research a claim that's so obviously fake. This book did not leave any mark on the comics industry. Whatever this UTF is, which just for the record sounds like it's some kind of bladder issue, this comic made such little impact that even this wiki forgot that it was Arch Enemy's first comic in the very next paragraph. It mentions Mayhem later on, so I can only assume that Arch Enemy was more on the creation side, with Image being on distribution to get out to a wider audience. And this isn't anything out of the ordinary, with a ton of Image creators having their own studios. But this wiki makes a claim that I absolutely love. It says the comic was one of the top selling independent, and the word independent is spelled wrong, comics of 2009, beating The Walking Dead's original numbers. Sounds great at first glance, The Walking Dead is huge. Years after it was first released, Kirkman has gone on record multiple times about how Image didn't have much faith in the property originally, and he had to lie just to get the first issue on shelves. That's Mayhem's greatest accolade. That's like me claiming that at one point I was stronger than Eddie Hall, but leave out the fact that it's because I trained on a day when he was resting. This entire wiki reads like a disingenuous dating profile, or like it was written by somebody that works for the company, mostly because it's written poorly. But what else can we gain from this? Apparently Percy's resignation didn't last long, since it says here that he was president in 2011. It's hardly a noble move to step down as senior vice president, but then take 2 steps forward and become president in the same company. From the only other article that I can find, it looks like the entire company was set up in 2003 by Percy Carey and the CEO William Wilson. Wait, why does that name sound familiar? No, that's not possible. I need to get a look at this guy. There must be a mistake. There must be 2 William Wilsons. That's the only explanation here. There must be one that is the CEO of Arch Enemy Entertainment and a second one that coincidentally happened to be writing Mayhem. Otherwise, it means that... No, there must be 2 William Wilsons. It's the only thing that makes sense here. Okay, this video should clear some things up.
Welcome to the studio. Movie posters. Wonder Woman.
This dude's just listing stuff in his office, but I noticed he couldn't say Tyrese was there.
Here we have everybody working. Got Will Wilson here on the computer.
Damn it, it's the same hairstyle for sure, but it's not enough to say it's the same guy, so let's keep watching.
I first got involved with Mayhem after Will Wilson, who is one of the writers on the book.
Oh nice, a boardroom meeting with all the team. Except for Tyrese.
Tyrese, he looked through my portfolio. They kept coming back to this one piece. He was just drawn to the character. He just really felt that that was his guy. The Enforcer was a character that both Will and I had put together. We ran it in the back of a book called The Undead Task Force, or the UTF. That was the first appearance of the gentleman we have now referred to as Mayhem.
No, I must have heard that wrong. UTF, but I've never heard of that book. Oh wait, yeah, UTF, Undead Task Force, the first book that Arch Enemy Entertainment published. At least one of the many according to the wiki. Wait, but if the character and story of Mayhem were already created by Will and Tone, then what did Tyrese have to do with this? Hold on, where's that interview that I found earlier? Maybe it's all just a misunderstanding. Ah, here we go. This should give me the answers.
Last year, it all started for me when I was out at Comic-Con promoting Death Race. You know, for me, at that point, the seeds were planted. I was like, I gotta figure out a way to be a part of this world. When I was out at Comic-Con promoting Death Race.
We ran it in the back of a book called The Undead Task Force.
No. But how could Tyrese get the idea for a character that had already been created a year earlier? Tone Rodriguez did the art for both Mayhem and UTF, and William Wilson wrote both of those books, so it's almost as if...
And Mike Lee approached me about a comic book that they were working on, and that's when I met Will Wilson and Tone, and, you know, Mayhem was born.
They kept coming back to this one piece, and he literally, like, would stop there and he goes, "What's that, guys?"
So it was never Tyrese behind Mayhem. He was just a puppy. Bingo. I've been investigating this Mayhem case for just over 10 months now, but it's something that's haunted me for 15 years. Every time I thought I was getting close to figuring out how this book could even exist, and then just disappear like it never did. Every time things started to make sense, I'd stumble down a rabbit hole and then be back at square one. Tyrese, iTunes, the song that doesn't even reference the book in the lyrics, Arch Enemy Entertainment, Image Comics, the Brian Hibbs debacle, the sales figures, Percy Carey, Robert Kirkman. Each piece of the puzzle that I got seemed to just take me further away from understanding how Mayhem could become such a colossal nothing in the end. How does this even happen? How is this such a failure? Why does no one remember this book? But maybe that's the most important part of the Mayhem story. the lack of legacy that it left behind in the end. Even something as bland, formulaic, and predictable as this 3-issue story should have made some kind of impact. But if my theory is correct, I think it's far more poetic they didn't. Given that the design and backstory for Mayhem had been created a full year before Tyrese was even on board by a publisher that was still in its early years and trying to break into the scene, which of these two scenarios sounds more likely? Option A. Tyrese did genuinely want to create this comic with these relatively unknown creators, with everyone spending hours and late nights poring over the script, Tyrese putting his busy movie and music schedule on hold to get this done, and the final product just so happened to be of poor quality despite everyone's passion, and just so happens to share the same design and backstory as one of the characters that was already developed by two of the creators of Mayhem, but for a title that just had no buzz or following. Or option B. Tone and William linked up with Tyrese, possibly through Percy Carey with his connections in the music industry, and managed to sell him on the idea of this comic character that they'd worked on before but just couldn't get off the ground. They then benefited from having a celebrity on it and hoped that the book would do better than the previous release. Tyrese would benefit from not having to be involved in the creative process and just had to put his name on the final product. And now, because he designed the character after him, if it did get a movie, Tyrese would have to be in the starring role. And because he had knowledge of different industries, he could project the character into movies and merchandise and be a lucrative opportunity for everyone involved. I can't say for certain which one of those scenarios was correct, and I don't want it to seem like I'm attacking anyone involved. There's no harm in getting a big name to endorse your product, but when there's clearly no genuine intent behind it, the final product will always feel hollow and like a cheap cash grab. So to wrap this up, anytime on this channel where I've spoken in absolutes, there is at least one person who will say that I'm wrong. But I am confident in saying that there is not one person who is still reading comics today that started as a result of Tyrese Gibson's Mayhem. And that may be the most important lesson that we can learn from the mess that is Mayhem. Comics are not the lowest common denominator. They aren't just a springboard for better opportunities that you can half-arse but still reap the full benefits. We aren't just a gullible community that will flock to the newest shiny thing because someone's shouting loud enough. And if you treat us like that, like how everybody found out working on Mayhem, you'll just end up looking silly.